Well, as a director, the main challenge to working with a group of plays is to make sure that you are contextualizing the whole evening so that the plays make sense in that context, and that you're allowing the plays to kind of speak to each other, so that it's not just a collection of skits, but it really is a full evening of stories.
What compelled me to write this piece particularly was the feeling of helplessness I got while I was experiencing it. And as I was about to get into writing the play, it was overwhelming me. And so the only way to deal with that situation was to write it. And it has allowed a lot of processing, at least on my part, because it's kind of a tragic story. That's why I told you I wanted to write something funny and up and, you know, musical, but it's a darker story. And there's humor in it, but at the same time, it's something specific. It feels different. It feels revealing. It feels scary. It feels dangerous for me to put on the stage. Today, just listening to it, even in the reading process, was very emotional.
Well, I've written a play called Mother Road, and I was compelled not so much by the DNA scientific research that we conducted through the workshop, but more so through family mythologies, stories I'd been told for several years by different people in my family, as well as mythologies about the moon. I guess I could call them cultural mythologies. So the moon became a big issue for me, and the notion of the two sides of identity, which are the complicated side and the simple side, and trying to define that through a personal story about two sisters.
My play is titled WASP, White Arab Slovak Pole, and it is a somewhat playful riff on mistaken identity or projected identity. In that most people, or well, let's say many people who I meet, tell me upon learning that my name is Jamil, and often after much clarification, that I do not look like a Jamil. And thus I am thrust into this position of explaining, articulating, sometimes defending how indeed I am a Jamil.
Yeah, mine was written about 3 days ago, and as I said, I wanted to wait until my body said something, and so what it ended up being, and how this was related to the DNA project, or all that went on and all that we saw in terms of and heard in terms of lectures, I ended up with this image of a man who comes out, and there's a body laid out. He's dressed in a suit, he has no shoes, no socks on, and it's his father's body. And he talks about his relationship with his father, like when he died, and then their journey together. And this whole idea of, kind of mythic father and son, and the idea that the father, did not know where his son came from in terms of his son wanting to be an artist. And the son knowing from the time he was little that was his propensity, and just the kind of idea of genetics and what's socialized and what came before, and how we deal with our parents dying, and what a son and progeny mean.
It's about a vertically challenged Asian American basketball phenom, high school girl, and she is thinking about going pro. She's good enough to go pro, but she's short. So she thinks, if I climb into my DNA and try to switch on the tall gene, that she's going to have her career made. So that's what my play is about. It's about an Asian girl who climbs into her DNA and with her sister and mucks around in there and discovers other things.
The play that I've written, which is called A Very DNA Reunion, is the fantasy of just an ordinary guy, an ordinary white guy who's 31 and hasn't done too much with his life, who takes one of these DNA tests and all of a sudden has fantasies that he's descended from Cleopatra, from Genghis Khan, from ninjas, and he gets them all together for this sort of fantasy reunion in his room. Meanwhile, his actual parents are kind of banging on the door trying to get him to explain what this charge is on their visa from DNAancestry.com. And it's a little bit influenced by my disappointment at what the science is not able to achieve at this point, as well as probably the first act of Carol Churchill's Top Girls and Saturday Night Live.
My play is about adoption, people's assumption about adoption, this whole idea of identity and this longing people have to answer the question, who am I, becomes a hugely different thing when one is adopted. So it became about taking something that people don't think about very often and applying the same questions I might have. Where did I come from? Where am I going? Knowing who my parents are biologically, applying that in a situation where someone's adopted, not knowing biologically who their parents are, being raised by a family, and that gave me an opportunity to work out this nature versus nurture question.
Well, I think in America, none of us are from America originally. Our families are not from America. So the Silk Road Theater Project, commissioning this project, is incredibly interesting because it gets at the root of Americanism in a certain way through the specific stories of these playwrights.